Welcome everyone to February's Dynamic Dialogue. I hope you had good holidays and got settled a little sooner than I did. It seems like this first of the year has been kind of crazy for me. So I intended to resume Dynamic Dialogue in January, but that didn't happen. So here we are in February and we have resumed. So we've got a new format this year in 2022. We're going to do the fourth Tuesday. No, it should be the fourth Thursday of every month. So I'll fix this before I send slides out. But we're going to stick with that fourth Thursday of the month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So if you are in a different time zone, please make sure that you make that conversion, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. We've got a variety of topics that we're going to cover, including some that I'll share with you at the end of this presentation that are coming up. But I'm also open to taking requests and ideas for topics. There's a lot going on in the world in terms of supply chain. So I'm thinking about creating another one just for the whole Ukraine issue, because that seems to be on everybody's mind, but it's also has some fingers that could affect the rest of the world. So I think you look for that in the next couple of weeks. I'll be putting that together probably before our next scheduled session on the 24th of March. So this is a forum for sharing thoughts, ideas, challenges, resources, lessons learned, whatever you have in terms of supply chain. And it's open to anyone and everyone who's interested in supply chain activities, which is more people now than ever before, I think, in no small part due to the pandemic and some of the issues that have arisen from there. So we do a short presentation, then I open it up for questions, comments, or whatever, keep it to less than an hour. This link is good for the rest of the year, so you can just hang on to that, but I will be sending those out ahead of time. You don't have to register for this series, but if you do, that will cut down on emails. And if you want to get fewer emails and just get a notification a couple days before, and then again, the link the day of, you can register for the series, and you can do that on our website. And I'll give you that information. So thank you again for joining us today. I'm going to talk about a topic that I think is very timely for the beginning of the year, whether you use this as your fiscal year, the calendar year is your fiscal year, or it's a little bit different. But I think that January and February seem to be a good time to kind of reset with everything in terms of goals and in terms of your supply base, what's working, what's not working, and those kinds of things. So I call it supplier differentiation, but it's also called segmentation, classification, categorization, and probably several other terms that just aren't coming to my mind right now. So you may have heard me talk about this subject before, because it's one I think is really, really key to companies who want to have good supplier management programs and processes. And it starts with a premise. And the idea is that the premise is that not all suppliers are alike, and you shouldn't treat them in the same way. Now, don't get me wrong, because you have to be fair and equitable in working with suppliers, especially while you're sourcing and doing sourcing activities. And discrimination on any basis is not allowed or permitted. But some suppliers don't all have the same value to the company, and they don't all perform in the same way, require the same level of relationship management, or have the same risks, because what you buy and how you buy it differs across your supply base. Excuse me. So I teach a lot of classes, and like every student in every class is not the same. I come from a big family, and I'm one of 6 kids. Not all of us is the same. That doesn't mean that we weren't all cared for and that I don't care about all of my students. But sometimes the handling and attention they require is going to vary. And you want to look at those aspects of suppliers that make them unique, that make them a little special, and recognize where you and your company resources should be focused. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to examine some principal criteria for segmenting the supply base. And we're going to talk about 2 different dimensions, both spend, which is very common, and strategic importance. Excuse me. Not sure why I have something caught in my throat. But in a bit, we'll go into more detail on the process that I recommend for doing this kind of activity. So we're going to start with the principle. Once you agree with the premise that not all suppliers are equal or need the same kind of care and handling, you need to look at how to separate and organize them. Many, if not most companies, use spend, and most leave it at that. But as this chart shows, that's a one-dimensional view. So you can look at spend from a low to high and concentrate solely on those suppliers that have what you deem in your organization as high spend. But I add another dimension, that of strategic importance. And when you add this dimension to the mix, the picture can change dramatically. So let's think about this in terms of suppliers. If we start with low spend, because those are the ones that tend to get little attention because they don't require as much attention. That's companies that make off-the-shelf parts, suppliers that you deal with that are highly transactional in the dealings that you have with them. So that's going to be what we call standard suppliers. Then we'll add in those that have higher spend. So this is generally where the attention goes first. And I'm going to ask you to think about the importance or value to your company as well as the spend. So when you think about that, then we have the same continuum from low to high. So if we think about companies with high spend, but with lower strategic importance to the organization, that's where we're going to get this category we call key. And you can call these different segments anything you like, whatever makes sense for you. But we've seen companies that do things way differently. And when you add in that spend, again, that's where your attention goes first. But if you think about other things, like I've worked with companies that buy components for PCAs, and they manage those components for their PCA supplier. So they buy all the parts, they consign those to a board populator, and that supplier actually bills the board. So at the end of the year, they showed a lot of spend with a component distributor, one like Arrow or Avnet that sells tons of parts and you can buy lots of different things from. So that's a good thing. But the spend can be significant, but the truth is they could buy those parts from many other vendors, or maybe they could before the chip shortage, because right now we know that that's putting a cramp in a lot of PCA manufacturers. But just because they consolidated all their spend into one of these distributors, and they had a considerable amount of spend there, but it wasn't really the same importance to their company as the spend with a couple of key components that they bought for those boards, like the memory and the processor, and all the resistors and capacitors and a lot of the other parts just were not nearly as significant to their company because there were a lot of suppliers that could supply those and a lot of distributors that they could buy them from any supplier through. So a supplier they had another supplier who produced a custom plastic part. So the part wasn't extraordinarily large. It was a very moderate cost in a per unit basis, but it happened to be the cover for their product. So being the cover, it was the first thing the customer saw. And it required tooling that cost almost $250,000. So it was a low dollar part, and their spend with that supplier really fell in that standard area category. But so the high dollar spend isn't always the mark of criticality, because that one plastic part that didn't cost very much was a real critical part to their product, to their customer satisfaction, to the view of their product that they presented to not only customers, but potential customers and anybody who was looking at that product. So that became much more strategic to them. So it's suppliers that encompass both that we really want to segregate and ensure that we have our internal resources focused on. And then those are those that end up in this strategic category. They're strategic to your business. They have technology that's important to you. They may have required a large investment, like I referred to, a tooling of almost $250,000. And this also encompasses sole sources. So a lot of companies I've worked with have sole sources that maybe don't have a particular amount of spend. Maybe you only buy one part from that supplier. And even if it's a high volume part, if it's not particularly expensive, then it might be a sole source with not much spend, and it might end up more toward that standard area. But sole sources need some extra attention. They need to be monitored. You need to make sure that you're doing things correctly with them. It can also be intellectual property. You can buy an off-the-shelf motor or pump or something similar that is not your company's design. You buy it from a manufacturer who makes those, and that's their key business, that's their core competency. But if you have bought that part and qualified it in your product, then that's very important for your company to make sure that you keep an eye on what happens to that, even if lots of other companies are buying that, because your particular product is qualified with only that, or maybe one other part that you're counting on to be the motor that drives it or the pump that moves fluid through it. And if something changes about that part, or if that company would decide to discontinue that, that could be a real critical impact to your company. So we want to look at more than just the dollars. We're looking at where are those dollars going and what kind of value is your company getting through the purchase of that part. And then finally, we have the last category. This is one of the exception categories. So there's two different exception categories, and we'll look at the other one in just a second. This one is what I call custom. And again, you can call these different boxes anything you like that makes sense to your company. But this custom box is where your spend may not be particularly high, but the supplier has importance due to some special circumstances. Maybe they're a supplier, but also a competitor. Maybe they're a big supplier to your competition. So you want to make sure that you're very carefully handling all the information that you share with them in terms of volume, in terms of intellectual property, as well as confidential things like forecasts and projections and cost. Or maybe it's a directed source, one your customer specified you need to use in order to get a contract with your customer. And there's lots of other scenarios that can come in there. So you want to be sure that you're keeping an eye on these suppliers, even if they don't have a lot of spend. If they have a lot of spend, then it's easy to slot them in either the key or the strategic boxes. But ones that you might buy, again, just one part from, even in moderate value, that may fall to the lower end of the spend, but be something that can be a real problem or a real opportunity for your company. So here's what these boxes look like in terms of how many suppliers you typically have in each of these areas. And it should be no surprise that it pretty much follows the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule that you might have heard of. Suppliers end up in the low spend and low strategic importance in higher numbers. Typically, the standard suppliers, in my terminology, are maybe 70-75% of your suppliers. So a large number go there. And not too many in the custom. It's usually less than 2% of your suppliers. So together, that's about 80% of your suppliers, but it's not going to be that much of your spend. And the strategic category has only about 5 to 10% of your suppliers, but a significant amount of spend. And if you combine the key and the strategic, that you typically have about 70, 75 to 80% of your spend in those two categories. But if it's a little bit lower, then that's how it works out. So those aren't hard and fast rules to fall by. The hard and fast rules are, what is your criteria for each of those segments of your supply base? What does that mean to you? And how are you going to deal with those suppliers? So here's yet another way to look at this. And this slide shows the final category, the do not use suppliers. So do not do business with, those are the ones on the bottom. And these are suppliers that are either currently suspended. You might have some work with them, some contracts that you're wrapping up, but you've decided not to award them additional business for now, for whatever reason. Or suppliers that you've had a bad experience with in the past, and you no longer want to use those or offer them the opportunity to bid with you for any particular product or program that you have. You can have lots of reasons to put suppliers into these categories, but it's one to really consider especially if it's like a recent designation when you're reviewing your spend history. So you might have a supplier that you've either suspended for now or suspended indefinitely because of something that's happened in the last year, year and a half. It might be a poor performance. It might be that they have financial issues that you don't think they're going to be able to overcome. Again, the reasons don't matter as much as the fact that you've designated this supplier to not get additional business. So you want to make sure that everyone in your organization understands that that is the situation with the supplier. It sounds unusual, but more than once I've seen companies who have suppliers that they're very unhappy with, or suppliers that are very risky, say in terms of finances. And you suspend them, you say we're not going to use them, and then you turn around and the new product team has them making prototypes or bidding on a part in this new product that's going to launch in the next 6 months. And or, oh, we bought this part before, so we're going to go back and buy from them again. But whoa, we had issues with that. We have a reason for doing that. So you want to make sure that these are clearly defined in your supply base. And when you look at these categorization, you want to understand what the spend was with them, but you also want to look at where is that spend now going to move to. If it's a contract that's closing out, then that's a simpler matter. But if it's not, if you have to move the work or you're going to need to resource that, then that's going to bubble up in your to-do list and make a higher priority. So the process of differentiation or segmentation should start with spend. But today, here we are in early 2022, it's really not that easy, and it's not nearly as simple as it was before the pandemic, and we all learned about COVID-19. Prior to that, I used to say, just get a download of all the purchases you've made from at least the last 6 months, because that's a reasonable amount of time. And if you can go back a year, that's even better. Companies sometimes want to go back farther. I say if you go back too much farther than a year, you're going to get so much data that it might not be, the conclusions you draw might not be correct because you've got so much input there. Or you might, or they only had 3 or 4 months of doing business, so we used what they had. And I think that was a reasonable place to start. And I think that would be a reasonable place to start today. But depending on your own business, your own company, your industry, the products you make, the products that you've made the last couple of years, the last 6 months or 12 months might not be the best representative of normal business or what you think might happen in the future. So you really want to consider, what did the virus do to your business? Did it make a lot of changes? Did it change the way you spend? Did it change the way that you produced? Have you produced other parts specifically for the pandemic that might be reflected in that spend that you don't plan to continue making? I work with a company that makes paint, and for a large part of the pandemic up to now, they were making hand sanitizers. They had chemicals, they had the ability to do that. They were providing those to local nursing homes, hospitals, even daycare centers and things like that, schools. So they were able to do that. But that's not a product that they typically make. That's not a product that they plan to add to their portfolio of products. That was something they did because they were able and they saw a need for that. Now, they discontinued that in 2021, about a third of the way through the year. But I think they kicked it back up for Delta for a couple of months. So they're gonna have spend from those suppliers to support that product line, but that's not going to continue in the future. So you want to take that into account. So does the last 6 to 12 months reflect your business plans for 2022 and beyond? If not, what are those differences? I've even counseled some clients in some areas to go back to look at 2019 as a model or as a distribution percentages of spend that might correlate better with their 2022 plans. Because of inflation and price changes since 2019, you might have to adjust for that, but that might be a better representation of the way that you spend money. Or what data do you have that's best to help your company be successful in 2022? What aligns with the things that to always include when you're analyzing spend? So keep in mind that spend analysis, while a very good place to start, is really a rear view mirror exercise, meaning it's looking backward. It's looking at what has happened either in recent history or in prior history. It's not a forward looking exercise. And for supplier segmentation, you want to include forward looking aspects as well. So at Purple Link, we approach supplier differentiation to identify suppliers, again, not with just the largest spend, but with opportunities that your company can tap into and make improvements. So you want to look into the future. You want to say what's happening. Consider the changes that you know are planned in your product lines, in your business, in your company overall. Look at where the different products that you make and that you buy parts for, look at where they are in their life cycle. What is going end of life or has just gone end of life in the last 6 months or obsolete? Historical spend might be considerably higher with those suppliers than your expected spend will be in 2022. So you want to project forward on that spend. Conversely, did you have new products that you were developing or launching or plan to launch early this year? Again, your historical spend may be very small in comparison, but you can expect that spend to increase with the launch and the release and moving through that growth and ramp cycle up into full production levels. And in some cases, companies see supplier spend really go up exponentially after they intro that product and it does well in the marketplace. They can't make them fast enough. So the spend there goes up almost exponentially. So if you have those changes, what does that mean to your business and where do those suppliers go in regards to those scenarios? So you're looking not only where they are today, where they were the last 6 months or 12 months, but where do you expect them to be through the course of these next 12 months of the year, 10 months of this year or into next year? So you want to think about, again, not only the spend, but the things that are critical to the business. Single and sole sources, as I talked about. Single sources because you put all your eggs in that basket. So that might be okay. And you might have easy ways to switch, low switching cost or no switching cost. It might be something that's readily available from many suppliers. If so, then you don't have a problem. But if you've got some switching costs involved, things like moving some tooling or any kind of customization that you do to that part, then you want to look at those single sources as well as the sole sources, which can be a lot trickier. Sole sources can be ones that have intellectual property, your company's intellectual property, or maybe you're using their intellectual property. It's someone it took you a long time to find, someone who you had to spend a lot of money, maybe with tooling and programming and different aspects of that to get them up and running. That's an important thing to consider and look at not only the spend with them, but what it would take to switch to another supplier. Look at the disruptions, which ones are causing you disruptions, which ones have let you down during the pandemic up to now, which ones have really come through for you, and where they're used and where your customers are that use those products. Then think about risk. Risk comes in lots of flavors: financial risk, quality risk, delivery risk, location risk. If you have a lot of suppliers in Asia, that's something to consider because you might be having problems at the port. You might be having issues with suppliers in different parts of the country that are having some issues, or any different kind of risk that you might have, cybersecurity, anything. So look at what your supplier's risk is, what your risk with that supplier is, and assess that as to where your suppliers are going to go in those 4 categories. Then think about performance and dependability. Think about who you've been able to rely on the last 3 years, 2 years, going into the 3rd one, and maybe who's let you down. So I know a number of businesses that I work with have said they found some suppliers during the pandemic when they couldn't find certain parts, and these suppliers have come in and really blown out of the water the previous suppliers that they had. Even though the previous supplier was someone they'd worked with for a while, had good confidence in, good faith in, good relationships with, but now those previous suppliers have been displaced. And then we've seen it the other way too. You find a supplier who you're desperate to find parts and you think they can find parts, and you find out that maybe you get gouged a little bit, or that they take your money and don't deliver all the parts they say, or they quote you a price, and when you say, yes, I need those, let's get those, all of a sudden the price has gone up. So there's been suppliers that haven't done so well with your as a customer as well. So think about those things. And then what's the business fit with the company that you are expecting to be continuing forward? What is your willingness to collaborate with them? What is their willingness to collaborate with you? And is this going to work well for both companies going forward? Many companies have had changes to the way they're doing business, to their product lines, to their mix of products, lots of different things that have come up during the pandemic. So the next thing we're going to look at is points. So you want to talk about history, and we've just gone through that in a lot of detail. The spend history, the performance history, and you want to think about those things when you're segmenting suppliers. I told you to think about the future, always an important thing. We none of us have crystal balls, but we all have plans and goals, and we know where we want to be. So think about the goals that your organization wants to achieve in 2022. Goals in cost reduction, supplier performance improvements, reducing risk in the supply chain, or even altering your supply chain architecture. Maybe you want to move things from Asia back to the United States, or maybe from Asia to Mexico or another low-cost country. So if you leave these things to chance and just kind of hope you're going to meet these goals, you'll win a few, but lose a few too, and you'll probably be frustrated overall with your results in a year. So to be successful, you really need to develop some specific supplier strategies. You need to have actions to take and metrics along with that to make sure that you can measure, you have the measurement techniques as well as the metrics to make sure that you can measure that, and suppliers know how you're going to measure that in order to achieve your goals. You want things that encompass the supplier relationship processes, things like escalation paths, scorecards, quarterly business meetings, which have taken on a whole different style and feel during the pandemic, or risk management processes, things like business continuity and succession planning. These processes are going to require some tools. And you, again, think about what value add your company is trying to achieve. So what are the things that you want to be and be different a year from now? So then we come to the next P, which is purpose. So the purpose of this exercise, this whole segmentation process, is really multifaceted because it helps companies prioritize, allocate, and delegate. It helps them with all of those things, but in terms of your suppliers, so you prioritize suppliers, you know how to allocate the time and the business to your suppliers, and you get a sense of what you can delegate to suppliers and what you need to do yourself. It helps you prioritize the resources that you have within your organization to manage suppliers and the supply chain. It helps you allocate those resources and put them with the suppliers that are going to give you the best return on that investment. And it will help you, if you're a manager, or help you as an individual contributor, delegate decision-making responsibilities where it's going to be most appropriate. You can look at this in terms of activities and tasks, and where does your management support need to go? So if you're like most companies, you're strapped for resources. And in this age of the great resignation, you're never sure who's going to be there from week to week, month to month. And managers are no exception. And to have good supplier management processes, you need to have management support, not only from the supply chain management and maybe operations, and if you report to finance, but you need the management support of your stakeholders as well. So that goes to engineering, quality, production, the planning, logistics, all of those people. So when you have this exercise and you get all of those organizations to pitch in and help you go through this separation process, then you're able to get everybody on the same page and everybody understands why this is an important supplier to the organization, or why this one is someone that we can easily replace. And so we don't need to worry about a lot of quality problems with this supplier, because we can go buy that part from 3 other suppliers, and we're going to do that as soon as we can. So this helps you segregate the critical few from the trivial many that you have in suppliers. Many companies have 500, 1,000, 1,500 suppliers. There's no way that they have, even large organizations don't have resources to manage all of those to the level that is required with supplier management, but they don't all require that either. Again, when you're buying parts, very transactional parts, you're buying off the shelf parts, you don't need a lot of supplier management in those areas. But when you have custom parts, when you have intellectual property involved, when you have tricky relationships, those are where you need to put your resources. So you want to identify the gaps that you have currently. Think about the risks that you have with the current supply base, but also think about the opportunities that you have in terms of the goals and things that you need, like cost reductions. And many companies are saying reductions, we're just trying to hang on. We're just trying to maintain these prices right now. If that's your goal, then enlist your suppliers to help you do that. When you go through this exercise, and it's very much a cross-functional exercise, it is not a one person sitting at their desk looking at the suppliers that they deal with and making these assessments. They should include your key stakeholders, the ones that do business and are interfacing with those suppliers, because it will give you this common language for supplier valuation and understanding that value to the organization. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a group meeting with a supplier where maybe they have a really bad delivery problem, but the engineering team loves them. So the engineering team says, yeah, this is great. We love this. We want to keep doing business with you. And maybe the buyer is saying, oh my God, I can't get them to give me dates. I can't get them to deliver on time. Or maybe it's the quality person that says, yeah, the engineers think they love them, but they don't package these things right. They're coming in with these silly little errors that they shouldn't be, but they're causing problems for us. So you want to make sure your whole team sees this supplier from all of these sides and understands, yes, this is what is good, because they all have strengths. This is where the weaknesses are. This is where we want to focus. And these are the changes we want to make over the course of this next year. It helps you develop the strategies that you need. If you're a category or a commodity manager, helps you develop the strategies and plans that you need to improve that performance. You understand what needs to be changed or what needs to be improved. I always say, do more of, do less of, start doing something that you're not doing, stop doing something that is not helpful. And what are the strengths and weaknesses, and how do we maintain the things that need to be maintained? So don't make changes in this area because this is working well. So it really can help you as an organization achieve your goals and objectives. And I was looking at this presentation a little bit earlier this week, and I suddenly felt this need to add another P. And this one, I think, is some pointers to help anyone conduct this exercise in their own organization. And the first one, I think, is really communication. Communication is key with your suppliers to understand their risks, understand their current status, understand what's going on there. And that's phone calls, it's emails, it's following up and following through. It's having escalation paths and knowing what to do when something doesn't go well. It is incorporating the total cost of ownership view into this analysis, into this exercise. It's not just the spend that we have, but what does it take us to manage that? Again, you might be spending not so much with a supplier, but if they're on your quality list of recurring problems, then you may say, this isn't worth it. We're not spending much with them. Two, they're driving our quality people crazy. Let's go find another supplier. Or it may be, yes, this is a sole source and we have to have that. and it's costing us all this money to do these things. Is this really worth it for us? Do we need to try to look at maybe a design change, or maybe do something different, or we need to get this supplier, I'll say, in here, and that means on Zoom, or maybe work with them in person if you can, if not virtually, and say, and let them know, hey, this is important to us. This is an important part. You're an important supplier, but we have to manage this better. We have to have better cost. We have to have better quality. We have to have better delivery performance. We have to have a better technical fit. Your parts are wearing, or your tools are wearing out. We want to make sure that you're investing to get things upgraded in the next couple of years, because this product is the backbone of our portfolio, and we expect to make that for the next 5 to 7 years. So whatever the issues are, make sure you look at it from a total cost of ownership perspective. Costs include direct costs, which in purchasing and supply chain, we focus so much on how much we pay for something, but also consider in that same umbrella of total cost, the indirect costs that are going into things, and where those are driving you crazy. So indirect suppliers and service suppliers also should be part of this exercise. You want to really be honest about these suppliers and call out the issues and the challenges you see, and also recognize the suppliers that are helping you and are really the ones that you can depend on. Think about the productivity drains of your own resources, your own team. You've got scarce resources, I'm sure, because everybody does. No one has enough people to do everything they want to do. So when you have scarce resources, choose wisely where you allocate those, and partner with internal and external stakeholders so that you can thrive beyond this pandemic as we start to come out of it and into whatever this new normal may look like for you and your organization. So what I know for sure is there's a better way to improve the results from the supply chain. And that starts with differentiating your suppliers and knowing where they are and applying the right supplier management techniques to those that have the most value and you're going to get the biggest return from. COVID-19 has been a big kick in the teeth to people and organizations. But companies are super aware now of how valuable supply chains are and how valuable managing those is to make sure that they can meet their top line goals, and everything that's going to hit the bottom line is not a total surprise. So that requires focusing resources on your suppliers that have these greatest opportunities or present the biggest risks. So you want to be proactive about selecting these suppliers. You want to make sure that you have the relationships with these key suppliers. You don't need in-depth relationships with every supplier. It's not possible, but which ones do you really need those relationships? And it has to go beyond just someone placing an order and account representative on the other side receiving that. It needs to have some managerial support, some stakeholder support like quality, production, engineering, whatever your stakeholder list looks like. You want to make sure that you've got specific goals and strategies for this year. So if you have goals, that's great. Look at it in terms of what suppliers can contribute most to us reaching those goals, and set specific strategies for them so that you're not just winging it, and that your suppliers know what those strategies are and how you're trying to work with them. It helps to identify the gaps as well as the opportunities, and then that will help you fill those in over the course of 2022 when you have new suppliers, or when you have good suppliers who are looking for additional business, which good suppliers often are looking to expand their business. If you know where your current gaps are, who can fill those that are already in your supply pool? This might move a supplier from a standard to a key, or from a key to a strategic. That can be a very good thing when you do it purposefully and you've got the right rationale to do that. And again, I can't say enough that you really want all of your team to have an understanding of the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, changes desired in suppliers, so that everyone on your team, when they talk to that supplier, has that framework, has that context, and doesn't say something out of their own functional perspective that may negate or hurt some of the other activities that you're trying to do. This is the basis for preferred and recommended supplier programs. If you don't have those are good things to put into your organization. They're good because they help you with sourcing activities. You go first to that list of preferred or recommended suppliers, and you encourage all of your partners to do that too, so that you don't find that the engineers decided, oh, we don't really like anybody, so we're going to go look for 3 new suppliers because we're on this new product team and we want to add 3 new suppliers. If you need to add new suppliers, that's great. If you don't, then which ones should they be talking to first? And they will understand why, because they've been through this process with you. And if you want to improve relationships with suppliers and get more performance, then recognize them and tell them, hey, we just did our sorting exercise, segregation, differentiation, segmentation, whatever you call it. We just reviewed our suppliers as we do every year, and you are one of the ones that ended up on our preferred supplier list. So we want to send you a certificate. We want to do this for you. We want to congratulate you. We want to say thank you for your good help and support, and we want that to continue into the future. Don't fool yourselves that suppliers don't make a big deal of that, because they do. These are the things that you find these certificates hanging in the lobby when you go there, or hanging in the manager's office that says, yes, we're a supplier of this. They often put these in very public places, maybe in the break room, so that people know, hey, when you're working on company XYZ, they've chosen us as a preferred supplier, and we want that to maintain that. So that's an important recognition for us. We're proud of that, and you should be proud to work on their parts. So these things really do help overall. So this is a great way. If you haven't thought about that before, it doesn't take a lot of effort, but you can really get a lot of mileage from those kinds of programs. So I would encourage you to do that. So that's what I have today in terms of supplier differentiation. Again, I think it's a very important activity. It's fundamental to good supplier management. I'll be back next month. I think these dates are right, for Thursday. We're going to talk about the Build Back Better implications. So there's a Build Back Better law that was passed, and there's some other things, activities in Congress, and how is that helping or hurting supply chains, and what are we seeing from that now, and what should we expect in the future? In April, we're going to talk about dealing with shortages and disruptions, because as good as everyone is, most everyone has some kind of issue with this. In May, we're going to talk about risk-based decision-making in supply chains and how that can be done, and how that can be done a little bit better. In June, we're going to be looking at skills and leading a learning transformation. And then in July, we're going to do kind of a reset and say, okay, here's what happened in the first half of 2022. Was Jane and Purple Link, did they know what they were talking about? Or, do these other people know that I'm reading webinars, I'm reading articles and attending webinars? Do they know? And then what are we going to expect differently for the second half of 2022? So I invite you to join us for all of those. You can check out our website for other events, or you can contact me directly anytime at that email, jane@purple-link.net. So if you'd like to discuss this or any other topic further, if you'd like help with doing this in your business, that's what we do. We help companies do these things better, implement these processes, train their people, get more value out of these. So you can anytime set up a free 30-minute call with Jane to talk about Purple Link and how we can help your business, because we know there's a better way to reduce cost and risk in your supply chain. We also do events. So I started a exam 3 CPSM review class this month, but it's not too early. It's not too late to sign up either. So the sessions are recorded and you can catch up rather quickly. We're going to do a workshop in Q2 on risk-based thinking and decision-making. It'll be an hour and a half a week, an hour and a half on one day, and we'll go for 3 weeks. And then if all goes to plan, then we'll do one on Lean and Six Sigma for supply chains. I get a lot of questions about how does this look and how do we do Lean, and is Lean going away? And the answer is no. There's a lot of opportunity for Lean in the supply chain, even though companies realized in some cases they were a little lean with inventory and things, but they're kind of resetting those goals and making that work. And as always, I'm going to leave you with one thought, which is my strive to thrive. And I thought this was funny. Comes from Elon Musk, and he says, wow, this supply chain stuff is really tricky. So we can look at this as really tricky and really hard to do, or we can look at this as things that we are good at as supply chain professionals. We know how to make these things happen, and we can help people like Elon Musk, who, one of the geniuses of our time. We can help navigate through these tricky waters and help our companies do better. So I'm going to stop the recording and stop the sharing, and I'm happy to take questions, comments. I can get this to work. Hopefully you do this in your organizations, and you can, if you can maybe take another look at how you do it, or offer some other ideas of what to do, augment what you do. This is, like I say, a good time to do it. So again, questions, comments, I'm open.
Well, if nothing else, this gave me a comfort that we're already doing a lot of this stuff today, which makes me feel pretty good. But you tossed out some good ideas too, Jane, on some things that we can expand upon and tweak a little bit.
That's great, better. Mike, because not everybody, like I say, so many companies I deal with stop at spend.
Yeah, we've definitely taken it farther than that, but again, there's always room for improvement.
So there's a question. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, and I will send this out to everyone that is a participant. And if you sign up for and subscribe, you'll get these whether you attend or not. So you always have the link. You can go to that. This one will be posted this week. And I'll send out the slides. I send out the slides every time, and I send out the a link to the recording. So you'll have all of that in the next day or two.
Thank you, Professor. It's good.
Hi, Manuel. Thanks for joining.
I'm trying. I just joined late. Sorry for that. Even I didn't.
No worries. Like I said, I'll send out the link. So
we're going to send it like usually. Is it?
You'll get an email.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
for the previous one, right? There's like other one also. For the first one.
Well, you can go to the YouTube channel and get any number of things. I have a lot of things there.
Oh, okay, that's good also. Okay, so you're just once you're doing this thing, you're posting on YouTube, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay. What about slides? You said you're going to send us slides, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, you're sending to our emails. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you want to get these automatically, then you need to subscribe. So on the email that I send, when I send this, there'll be one to subscribe. And then, like I say, you'll get fewer emails, and you'll be able to get the recordings and the slides for everyone that I do, whether you can attend or not.
Okay, that's through your website, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, it's great to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody. I'm glad to be back doing these. It was fun to put this one together, and we've got a lot of interesting topics this year. So thanks everyone for your time. I'll take other questions and comments. If not, like I say, then you'll hear from me soon.
Okay, thank you. See you later.
Bye. Yeah, I'll see you later today.
Thank you, Jane. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike, for coming. Hope to see you soon.
You will. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jane.
Is that you, Larry, at the HLS conference?
Yes. It
Good. Hope this was helpful for you and your team.
definitely was. We appreciate it.
Good. Talk to you soon.
I think we plan on
Thank you, Jane.
joining in with the rest of them.
Great. That'd be great.
Cool. We'll
Make
talk to-
Larry buy you guys lunch.
Yeah, all right. I'll see you later.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Thank you, Jane.
How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good.
Good. You seem busy, which is good.
Yeah, it's, it's crazy. I can't believe that February's like gone, I'm like, okay, it should be about the middle of January.
Yeah, too fast, definitely.
Yeah, it just keeps going and going. So, but you and your family are all okay, still healthy and
Yeah, we're doing well. No one's sick, and thank goodness for that.
yeah, knock wood. We have
Yeah.
neither my husband nor I have gotten COVID yet. But we know families that have, and this Omicron, it just seems like people that were, families full of people that were double vaxxed and boosted, and still they got this. And
Right.
some of them none of them were hospitalized, but some of them were pretty sick for several days. And some of them were like kind of a minor cold. It was very weird. It's a weird disease, or virus, I guess is the correct word.
Yeah.
Affects everyone differently. So,
Well, my philosophy is we should be a little bit more cautious for a little bit longer just to see what happens. But I guess we just have to, each of us need to do it ourselves if the states aren't going to do it.
I agree with that, but I also think that you should respect the company that you're in, so if
Sure.
someone says, hey, I prefer this, then you should say, okay, I can do that.
Right.
I just started teaching back at Northridge last week for the first time in 2 years. I had been off campus almost 2 years exactly.
Wow.
And I have 3 classes. In 2 classes, I have like 50 students. And I'm just like, I do not want to sit in a classroom with 50 people that are unmasked and, could be in contact with whatever. So luckily we have mask mandates. 50 people is still a lot, even with mask mandates. I'm like, is this really smart? Should we be doing this?
Yeah.
But we are. So, but it's nice to have a live audience again. That's a good thing for me, and
Sure.
to be teaching in person. But the protocols, they're pretty strict. I have to go online every day that I go to campus and get clearance to get on campus. I had, ask questions, no fever, no exposure, no this, no that. And then it says you're cleared to come to campus. I have to turn that into my department head. And students have to do the same thing. So,
Well, that's
hopefully
good to
that,
hear that they're continuing to do that.
yeah, hopefully that prevents some people. You got to at least think, gosh, I do have I got choked up during this thing. Luckily I always have water next to me, but no, I don't feel bad. It was just a dry throat kind of thing. I don't know what for, but yeah, do I feel bad? Do I really do this? Was I in contact with somebody? No. Okay, that feels good. Then I can go. So.
Yeah. Not everybody has the same moral compass as we do. So about, because it's not only about protecting yourself, but people around you. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's always been the scary thing for me, is because you can have it and not know it, because you can be literally asymptomatic and still be carrying it. And so I don't want it, but I sure don't want to give it to anybody either. So
Right. We'll just stay safe out there.
yeah, that's what we're doing. Sounds like you guys are doing that too. That's good.
We are. All right. Well, thank you so much. And,
okay, I'll see you soon.
see you next month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.